Okay, so you're renting in California, and you want to know your rights. But man, there's like a million pages of legal stuff out there.
Yeah.
It can be so overwhelming to figure out where to even start.
Absolutely, it can be a lot.
That's what we're doing today, diving deep into California renters' rights.
Sounds good.
We're going to lay it all out nice and clear, especially when it comes to evictions. Nobody wants to deal with that, right?
Right.
We'll be looking at legal summaries and FAQs to get you the info you actually need. And hey, if you're ever in a situation in Orange County, Riverside, San Diego, Los Angeles, and need some real legal help, especially with evictions, check out martinezlawcenter.com.
Great advice. And you know, it's interesting. California has really been stepping up to protect renters in recent years. It's pretty fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like with the Tenant Protection Act of 2019, it's also called AB 1482.
AB 1482.
Right, and that brought in this big idea of just cause eviction.
Just cause. So what does that even mean?
Basically, it means your landlord can't just kick you out for any random reason.
Oh.
They need a solid legal reason. It's a big change.
So it's not like the old days where they could just give you a 30-day notice and that's it.
Nope, not anymore. It's a lot like employment law now. You know, an employer needs a good reason to fire someone.
Right.
It's similar for evictions. More security for renters.
Okay, I like it. So tell me more about this just cause thing. What kinds of reasons are we talking about?
Sure. So the reasons are divided into two main buckets. At fault and no fault.
At fault, no fault.
Right. At fault basically means the tenant did something wrong, something that broke the rental agreement or caused problems.
Got it. And no fault means it's...
More about the landlord's plans for the property, not really about the tenant's actions.
Interesting. Let's start with at fault. What would fall under that category?
Well, the most common one you probably already guessed is not paying rent.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah. If you don't pay your rent on time, the landlord can hit you with a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit.
A 3-day notice. So you got to pay up or get out fast.
Yeah. Exactly. Though keep in mind, it's usually 3 business days, so weekends and holidays can give you a little extra time.
Good to know. Okay, so besides not paying rent, what else could get you an at-fault eviction?
Another big one is violating the lease agreement.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Sure. It could be having a pet when your lease says no pets allowed.
Yeah, that's a classic.
But remember, service animals and emotional support animals have special protections. They're usually not considered lease violations.
Right, of course.
Other examples could be subletting without permission or causing major damage to the property, like way beyond normal wear and tear.
Basically, you got to hold up your end of the bargain as a tenant.
Exactly.
Got it. What else falls under at fault?
Well, there's also nuisance.
Right.
And this isn't just like, being a little bit annoying. It's about seriously disrupting the peace and quiet of other people in the building or even the neighbors.
Okay, so like what? Blasting music all night long?
Yeah, something like that. If you're constantly doing stuff that bothers everyone else, despite warnings, that could be considered a nuisance.
Makes sense. Anything else?
One more. Criminal activity on the property. Pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
If you're using your rental for illegal stuff, that's definitely grounds for an at-fault eviction.
Yeah, no arguing with that one. Okay, so that's at fault. It's on the tenant. Now let's talk no fault. What are some reasons a landlord could evict someone even if the tenant hasn't done anything wrong?
All right, so no-fault evictions are a little different. They're more about the landlord's reasons, not the tenant's behavior. One big example is if the landlord wants to move into the unit themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, they have that right. And it doesn't just have to be the owner themselves. It also covers their immediate family. So that could be spouse, kids, parents, even grandparents.
So like if the landlord's mom needs a place to stay, they could evict a tenant for that, even if the tenant's been there forever.
Yep.
Wow.
It would fall under no fault.
Okay. What else is considered no fault?
Another common one is if the landlord wants to sell the property.
Makes sense.
But here's the catch.
Hmm.
There has to be a real signed sale agreement. And the buyer has to be planning to live there themselves.
So they can't just kick you out to make it easier to sell.
Right. The buyer's intention matters. It's a way to protect renters from just being pushed out for a quick sale.
Good. What other reasons are there?
Well, if the landlord wants to demolish the building or do some seriously big renovations, that could be a reason.
I see.
But, and this is important, the renovations have to be so big that the unit has to be empty.
Right. Like you can't renovate with someone living there.
Exactly. It can't just be like, oh, we're going to repaint and update the cabinets. It has to be major work that requires everyone to move out.
Okay, makes sense. Anything else?
The last main one is if the landlord decides to stop renting the property altogether.
So they're basically taking it off the rental market.
Exactly. They're done being a landlord, at least for that property.
Got it. So we've got at-fault and no-fault evictions. Now, does the type of eviction affect how much notice a tenant gets?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The notice periods are different depending on whether it's at fault or no fault.
Okay, tell me more.
For at-fault evictions, like we talked about, not paying rent, breaking the lease, that kind of thing, the landlord usually have to give a 3-day written notice.
3 days? That's not much time.
Nope. It's a pretty tight window to either fix the problem or move out.
And what about for no-fault evictions? Is it the same?
No-fault evictions generally give tenants more time to find a new place.
That's good, at least.
Yeah, California law usually requires landlords to give 60 days written notice in most no-fault situations.
60 days. That's better than 3.
Way better.
Yeah.
It's meant to give tenants enough time to find a new home since it's not their fault they're being evicted.
Right, that's fair. Now, I've also heard about something called relocation assistance. Do landlords have to pay that in no-fault cases?
In a lot of no-fault situations, yeah, they do. It's meant to help tenants cover the costs of moving unexpectedly.
Okay, so it's like financial help to make the move a little easier.
Exactly. The specific amount and when it's required can vary, though. So if you're facing a no-fault eviction, it's super important to figure out exactly what your rights are.
Really good advice. Now, all of this is at the state level, right? But what about local rules? Do those matter too?
You know, that's a really important point. California sets some pretty strong baseline protections for renters. But a lot of cities and counties have their own rules that are even stricter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they can add more limitations on evictions or make the notice periods even longer than what the state requires. San Francisco is a good example. They have some really strong tenant protections.
So even though California's laws are already good for renters, it's still important to check what your local city or county says too.
Absolutely. What applies statewide is kind of like the bare minimum. Your local area might have even better protections for you.
Got it. Okay, so evictions are a big deal. We've covered that.
Yeah.
What about rent increases? Does California law put any limits on how much a landlord can raise the rent each year?
Yes, it definitely does.
Okay, good.
That same Tenant Protection Act we talked about, AB 1482, also covers rent increases. Generally, it limits annual increases to no more than 5% plus the local inflation rate.
5% plus inflation.
Right. But there's also a cap, an absolute maximum of 10%. Whichever is lower, that's the limit. It prevents those crazy rent hikes that used to happen.
That's a relief. Are there any properties that are exempt from these rent increase limits?
Yeah, there are a few exceptions, like brand new buildings.
Brand new.
Yeah, if a building was built within the last 15 years, those rent increase limits don't usually apply.
Interesting.
Also, single-family homes and condos are usually exempt, but only if they're not owned by some huge corporation.
So the age of the building and who owns it can make a difference.
Exactly. It can get kind of complicated.
And what about notice? If a landlord is going to raise the rent, how much notice do they have to give?
That depends on how big the increase is. If it's 10% or less, they have to give at least 30 days written notice.
30 days for a smaller increase?
Right. But if it's a bigger increase, over 10%, then they have to give you at least 90 days notice.
90 days for a big one. Okay, that makes sense. Gives tenants some time to figure things out.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we've talked about getting into rental, potentially getting evicted, and rent increases. What about that big upfront cost? Security deposits. What does California law say about those?
Oh, yeah. Security deposits are a big deal.
They can be so expensive.
Totally. Luckily, California has some specific rules in place to protect renters.
Okay, good. Tell me more.
So as of July 1st, 2024, there are new limits on how much a landlord can charge for a security deposit. This is thanks to a law called AB 12.
AB 12.
Right. For unfurnished rentals, the max security deposit is now 1 month's rent.
1 month's rent. That's it.
That's it. And for furnished rentals, it's 2 months' rent. That helps make renting a little less expensive up front.
Definitely. Now, when you move out, how long does the landlord have to return your deposit?
They have 21 days after you move out to return it.
21 days. Okay. And what if they're keeping part of the deposit? Like if they say you damaged something?
If they're keeping any of it, they have to give you an itemized list explaining exactly what they're deducting and why.
So it can't just be some random amount. They have to justify it.
Exactly. And they can only deduct for unpaid rent and for repairs for damage that goes beyond normal wear and tear.
Right. Normal wear and tear. That's where things can get tricky, right?
Right.
What exactly does that mean?
It can be a bit subjective, but generally it means the kind of wear and tear that happens just from living in a place normally. Like,
Yeah.
think about small scuffs on the walls, maybe the paint fading a little bit, or the carpets getting a little worn.
Right, just stuff that happens naturally over time.
Exactly. But if there's serious damage, like a broken window or a huge hole in the wall, or stains that wouldn't come from normal use, that's usually considered beyond normal wear and tear.
So the landlord could probably deduct for those repairs.
Most likely.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about the actual living conditions of the rental. What are a landlord's responsibilities to keep the unit in good shape?
Well, in California, landlords are legally required to provide a habitable living space.
Habitable. So what does that include?
It means things like making sure the plumbing works, the heating and electrical systems are in good order, and the structure of the place is sound. No leaky roofs or broken windows.
Right, so the basic stuff has to work, and the place has to be safe and protected from the elements.
Exactly. It's about providing a decent place to live.
Okay, so let's say something major breaks, like the heating goes out in the middle of winter. What should a tenant do?
The first thing you should do is notify your landlord in writing about the problem and request the repairs. It's really important to have a record of this communication.
So don't just call them, put it in writing.
Exactly. Send an email or a letter. Keep a copy for yourself.
Got it. And what if the landlord just ignores the request?
If they don't make the repairs within a reasonable time frame, California law gives tenants some options.
Like what?
One is called repair and deduct.
Repair and deduct. What's that?
It means that under certain circumstances and with the right documentation, you can pay for the repairs yourself and then deduct that cost from your next rent payment.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah, it can be. But there are specific rules you have to follow, so it's important to get informed about the details.
Right. You don't want to just do it without knowing the rules.
Exactly. Another option, again with some legal caveats, is withholding rent until the repairs are made. But again, there are very specific rules and potential risks involved, so it's crucial to understand the process fully before going that route.
So definitely get informed before doing anything drastic.
Absolutely.
Okay, what other important rights should California renters know about?
Well, there are a few more big ones. First, you have a right to privacy in your rental. That means your landlord generally needs to give you at least 24 hours written notice before entering your unit, except in emergencies, of course.
Makes sense.
There are also strong protections against discrimination.
Discrimination? Like what kinds?
It covers a whole range of things. You can't be discriminated against because of your race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, whether you have a disability, or even your source of income. Like if you use a Section 8 voucher, they can't hold that against you.
So landlords can't be picky about who they rent to based on those factors.
Exactly.
Good to know.
Anything else?
California also has laws protecting tenants from retaliation.
Retaliation.
Yeah, like if you request repairs or join a tenant association, your landlord can't retaliate against you for that, like raising your rent out of spite or trying to evict you for speaking up.
That makes sense.
And finally, there are situations where you can break your lease early without getting hit with a bunch of penalties.
Really? Like what kinds of situations? Well, if you're a victim of domestic violence, you have the right to break your lease without penalty. And if the rental becomes uninhabitable because of something the landlord did or didn't do, you might be able to break your lease too.
Wow, so California really does have a lot of protections in place for renters. It seems like they're trying to create a balance between protecting tenants and still allowing landlords to manage their properties.
Yeah, that's the idea. Like with the just cause eviction rules, it protects tenants from being kicked out unfairly, but it still lets landlords deal with legitimate problems.
Right.
And with rent control, it helps keep housing costs predictable, but landlords can still increase rents reasonably to maintain their properties.
It sounds like California law is really on the side of renters.
It's definitely a renter-friendly state, especially compared to some others.
Okay, so to wrap things up for everyone listening out there, the key thing to remember is California law gives you some serious rights as a renter, but knowing your rights isn't enough. You got to understand the specifics.
Right, exactly.
You got to know the rules, the notice periods, and what steps to take if you face a problem. And remember, it's not just state law. Your local city or county might have its own rules too, so do your research.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And as you're thinking about all this, ask yourself, what does just cause eviction really mean for me? What would I do if I got an eviction notice? Being proactive is the best way to feel confident and secure as a renter. And if you need more legal help, especially with evictions in Orange County, Riverside, San Diego, and Los Angeles, head over to martinezlawcenter.com. Stay informed, stay empowered, and know your rights.
Yes, knowledge is power.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks so much for breaking all this down for us. I feel way more informed about renters' rights in California now. And for everyone listening, I hope you do too. It's all about understanding your rights so you can feel confident and secure in your home.
Absolutely. That's what we want for everyone.
Thanks again for joining us. And to all our listeners, stay informed, stay empowered, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Call now 714-442-9741. Thank you.